Alrighty. I'm going to give this just a few minutes to hopefully populate. I am your host, Sean Darling, and today I'm going to be showing you creating a character in Moho. Hopefully we will get through the entire process in this video. Sorry, trying to clean my glasses here. I'm not sure what's going on. There we go. So, alright. I guess we can go ahead and get started. Basically what I have done is created an image to trace in, what was this, in Procreate, I guess. And so now I'm going to bring it into Moho here and recreate it and rig it. This is for a Christmas animated video for someone. And first things first, we're just over here on our layer 1, and I'm going to change the name of that. Call this head, I guess. And with that, we're just going to start. I'm not going to be doing this in a sketching drawing way. I'm just going to go ahead and plot these points out. So I'm just going to start here and try to be as symmetrical with my points as possible. And I'm just going to begin laying out some points and kind of paying attention to where these curves kind of and how they are created by watching kind of what they do as I go. So I'm just going to go ahead and make this a rounded shape kind of above here because we're not going to see any of this, but I want it to continue the flow of the line. So I'm just going to connect all this down here to the face. Try not to add too many points at first anyway, as you will start to get bad curvature here. What I mean bad is just not necessarily exactly what you want. So I'm going to now click that, and it's going to close the shape. And I'm going to come over here to my curvature tool and the show Bezier handles. And it's kind of hard to see with them being in black, but I'm just going to move these around to try and get my curvature a little nicer. Mostly they look pretty good, I guess. You know, trying to just adjust a few points. If I really wanted this perfect, I could have just flipped half of this, deleted the other, or whatever, like kind of generally do. But I don't mind it being slightly off for what it or how it's going to be used, so it's not that big of a deal. Just kind of trying to centrally align some of these points. I'm trying to also make sure there's kind of the same amount from one side to the other. It's not necessary, but it helps to kind of balance out when you add a bone or you do point animation or something like that. So that's relatively the same. I think there might be one missing, but it's fine. And the next thing I'm going to do, because right now there's no color in this face whatsoever, is to click on this black line, and you can see here the fill is unchecked. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and now we have a gray, as you can see here, fill. If I want to use the color that's in this, because this tracing image is lighter and it's not the actual color, either I can bring in another image of this, or I can reference it from my desktop or something. But I'm going to go ahead and bring in the an image. So I'm just going to go to File, Import. We're going to go to Image, and I'm not going to show you guys this, but I'm going to find my image and just bring it in. Okay, and once that is done, I'm going to save, because that's something, this is a recovered file. I'm going to go ahead and save this as well. And we'll just move this over again, and we're going to call this girl. Don't think I had this already. I was working on it already, so I'm not sure why I'm not seeing this as in here. That's the Santa, blah, blah. Okay, so yeah, we're just going to go ahead and save it. Cool. All right, so now I'm just going to move it off to the side, size it down. It's not what we're using to do anything other than color. So with this here, on its own layer, you can see, this is my image I'm using kind of as our background layer. It's not even a tracing image now that I think about it. But now that we have this set up, I can just grab color from here. So on the head layer, with that color selected using my select shape tool, I can come over here, grab my little eyedropper, and say use this for that color. So now we have the head shape there. So I like to do the biggest shapes first. I'm not going to go in and do all of the face shapes yet. So let's go ahead and create the hair, I guess. So that'll be on top of the head layer. So we're just going to create another one with that head layer selected. So just click on that button and create a vector layer. And now I'm going to rename this hair. We're just going to have it from this angle to start with. You know, I could do two separate pieces so it's easier for her to turn her head, which I'm thinking, should I do that now? It might be a better idea. In that case, I mean, I'll need a left and a right and a back just to be safe. Let's do that. Let's go ahead and do a, this is going to be the right. It's kind of like a right front, but we're going to call this hair left, I'm sorry. So hair L, not BL, but hair L. Back that up. And we're just going to go ahead and copy, or I'm sorry, draw these points. You see how I'm kind of spacing them out. And let's go ahead and go all the way to this edge. And yes, I know it looks curvy, and it will here too, until we go and select that point. And then we can click on Control P, which will make it a sharp point. It'll peak it. So Control P, and we have that again. We're going to want to go to our select shape tool, click on it, and now we're going to come over and turn on the fill, and we're going to now use our eyedropper to grab the color of the hair for that section. Very simple. So it looks somewhat like that one. And we're going to do the same thing now. We're going to create another layer here, vector layer, and we're going to call this hair right. And I don't care if I misspell it at this point, but we're just going to do this again. And I'm going to make a point right there where I kind of want this shape to stop, because those lines will stop. And you'll see why in a second. I believe I did that for the other side already as well. So I'm just going to make a couple of points here and kind of come up in here somewhere where it needs to be. We're going to go ahead and peak those points again by going back to the select. Click on the point you want to do and Control P. This one will also be Control P. And we're going to go ahead and fill it in like the other. So I'm just going to click on it. It's going to use the same color. We just need to turn on the fill. Now, to keep from having these lines here, I put some points there very specifically right here and here so I can erase this line. But we're going to do that with this tool here called the Hide Edge tool. And I'm just going to click on it and that edge goes away. If we go back to our hair L, there should be one here too. I did not place it as well. So I'm going to come back over here and move that where it really should go. Something like this. Cool. Now the hat's going to cover this part of the hair, so we don't worry about that. But behind the head now, we're going to need to put a back hair. Now this one's going to be pretty long. We're going to see if we're going to use this as a full piece or if it's going to be 3 pieces in itself, but I think we can get away with just one. So I'm going to go ahead and click a vector here and come down and put this behind the head. I'm going to change that layer name to hair back. Head back in town. And now I'm going to just come in here and draw the points in where I know this will need to be. I'm going to ignore those cross lines. I'm going to put like 3 at the bottom and obviously 1 at each corner, trying to keep it somewhat symmetrical with the other side. This one has a little more curvature to it, so there's a couple more extra points. Obviously, we are going to have to come across here too so that it's all connected. We will select these corner points and do a Control P. Here, Control P. The corners here, the same and the same. We're going to go ahead and select the outer shape there and just turn on the fill for it because the yellow is already selected. There's nothing else that has to be done, and you see this will blend nicely. Once it's rendered, you won't see any kind of a weird hint of a line there. And now for these other lines, we can do these multiple ways. Because these are going to not be cutting the shape into different pieces, we can just take using that same shape that we already have here and just add a couple of lines. We click on it first, then click on it again to give us the ability to extend that out. And then we'll do the same here. Click on it once, click on it again, and 2 different points there. And then we'll do the same here. Click on it once, click again, and we have this one. Now I'm going to adjust our points. I'm going to just come in here and play with these a little bit to where they look slightly better. And we can come in here too and click our line width tool and just pinch off the points of all these. Can even pull the middle down just a little bit more. Sorry if I'm spitting into the microphone here. If you're watching, say hello. And cool. So that is pretty much done. So we got the hair, the parts for the hair, and the hair back, and the head here. So I want to make sure that I'm not going to group these because we could group the top hair pieces with the head, but I'm going to wait. The back of there has to be behind the head, so I'm not going to just group all the hair together. Otherwise, we'll lose the face. So let's go up and do the hat. That's the next one. I'm going to do this in 3 pieces that are going to be on the same layer this time. So the benefit of that is you can keep it contained to one layer, and but you can still move things in front or behind, but it can be contained to one layer is really what the point of that is. So we're going to go hat, and it just is different with every situation as to how or why you may do that. I'm going to say, hey, what's up in the chat so you guys can see that. So on the hat layer, we're going to need to pick some colors. Let's start with the rim of the hat here, this little furry rim. And I'm just going to pre-select the color here in the style window here and say, okay, use that. So now when we draw something, it will use that. We're going to go with the autofill option here on the add points tool, which I didn't have turned on before. So I'm just going to come in through here and create some points following along my lines. I'm using a mouse for this. If you can't see my face, you obviously can't see my hands, but I'm not looking down at anything. I'm not on my graphic display right now. So Control P on both of these, just to make those sharp corners. And of course, you can go in between here with your curvature tool or hit C on the keyboard and round these out by just making them a little wider like that. So there is that first portion. Keeping the same color, we're going to do the little ball on the head now because it saves time to not have to switch out colors. So I'm just going to stay on the same layer. I'm going to draw this little ball here, and then we can come back in, deselect everything, and edit our points around. And that one's fine where it is. It has no stroke on it, so I'm going to click on it and make sure you turn the stroke on for that. Cool. And now on the same layer, still, I'm going to show you guys how to do raise and lower shapes within the same layer. We're going to go, oh, actually, I just totally said something that I'm not going to do. On the same layer, not a new one, we can now, if we want to pre-change this color, let's pick the pink like that. Oops. Now, the reason why that changed because we had it selected. Let's undo that. You can see here there's a little checkerboard pattern. We had our select shape tool selected and it was clicked. It's hard to see unless you're really up here, but there's a little checkerboard pattern in here. We want to deselect that stuff before we draw a new shape with the, before we change the color here. So I'm going to go to the style panel, change the color to the hat color. See, nothing changes because nothing was selected. And now I'm going to go back with the shape tool. Now I don't want to click on any of these lines or it will weld it to those. So we're just going to click in places that are not connected like this. I'm just going to come around. All this can be fixed shortly. I'm going to cross over without clicking on that line. And even on this one, we're going to click somewhere in here so that we don't have any possibility of that welding. Now, if we have auto weld selected here, when we switch over to our transform tool, it will weld this point to this one. So I'm going to turn that off. And we're just going to move this one down a little bit. And then we can come in and do our curvature on our points like this guy. Control P, and you don't have to be in the curvature tool to do that. You can actually be in the transform points or the select points tool. So we just click on all those. We're pretty much good to go. Now there's only one problem. You can see that this shape is in front of this shape, and it shouldn't be. In fact, I think I might even want the white ball in front of this. So what I would do is click on that shape using your select shape tool. Go to draw, and now we're just going to lower this all the way to the back, and it will drop it beneath those other two shapes. And you can raise and lower shapes within a layer like this. It's very handy to have to keep from making new layers for every single thing. All right, so once that is there, we can either draw in the face or start working on the body. The face is going to be more involved with the eyes and stuff, so let's go ahead and start with the body here. Now, I'm just going to make a layer on top, and we'll call this torso for now. And depending upon the complexity of your character, you may or may not want to make it one or two halves or whatever it's going to be. I'm going to do the body in kind of one layer here. And so I'm just going to start... we can include the collar here in a moment, but I'm just going to include the shape of it without making a new piece. And I'm just going to make some points that come around and do what we want. Now those ones that need to be sharp corners, obviously we can do that in a bit. Try not to use too many points. I was actually using a few too many just there. And once we have that, I'm just going to come around. You do want to make sure you use enough points, though. And what is enough? Whatever your character needs to be able to move properly, to be honest with you. It's hard to say, not seeing your character in front of me, but use your best judgment on what makes them move the best. But curvature is your best friend when it comes to, making sure you have this set up well enough to do what you need. So I'm just going to make a kind of like close this off here. This will all be hidden by the scarf anyway. Now you can see that some of these shapes are not sharp enough, or some of these corners are not sharp enough. So any of these 4 tools, I typically use this one or this one for this. I'll put it on transform points because that way if I need to move it after I peek it, it's already ready to go. So Control P will sharpen that, and then I can just come in here and move that around as needed. This one may or may not want to be peaked. This one I'm going to peak just because it's going to be hidden anyway, and I don't want that roundness to affect my my line kind of coming through here. This one may or may not need more. I'm going to go ahead and peak it though. I'm going to adjust some of these to be on a better place, and then you can use your curvature to make that more or less curved or smooth. So I'm going to go back here and select this point, Control P. I'm just keeping my fingers on the Control and P keys as I do this, sort of in the sharpening mode. And right here I'm going to go to curvature and just sort of pull around some of these points to kind of make them more appropriate, what they need to be. Alright, and then back to my selection and Control P. Here's another Control P, and then we can move that one to, and if you want to use shortcuts instead of kind of the way I'm doing it, you can. For the select, it is G, and the transform points is T, and the add is A. It's very kind of intuitive. Let's see where this one needs to be about. You can also make these lines a little thinner, I think. More thin, I guess is the way. So Control P on that one. We can go to Control P for the corners. Make sure you don't select all of them like I just did. We can go like Control P, double check how that was going to work. If it's too sharp, you know, make it rounded instead, or whatever you need to do. I'm going to go with a peak right here in the center, and obviously, well, not obviously, but you know, probably one on the corner there. Realign all these guys. And like I said, if we need to, we can drag that curve out more to get a more rounded shape. And do a Control P here and here. We might lose this point on purpose. Might choose to be done with that point, but it's not necessary. I'm just thinking maybe just because we may not need it if I was to adjust the curvature better. But you do you. All right. I think that is probably all good. This one probably does not need to be there. Okay, so that is our main little body there, and then now we can start adding some of these interior lines. Since these don't cut all the way across, I have no problem with them come in here and you click enter and they will turn into the lines. If you click on a pre-existing dot, you don't need to click it twice. I'm putting, you know, 3 to 4 dots per line here. So just kind of here, 1, 2, 3, just to maintain the curvature. You could go back and adjust if you need to. 1, 2 here. I always use at least 3 points though per line, just so you can bend the middles. If you don't, then you might not be able to put it in the exact shape that you want. 1, 2, 3, and another 1, 2, 3. So that one I got a little wonky. Just going to pull that middle one down slightly like so. We can come back and taper all those ends after the fact as well. 1, 2, 3. Over here to our line width tool, which is W, you know, for width, and just kind of pinch down those ends a little bit. I'm not going all the way. Trying to keep it like the original artwork. A little more. And that will work for the overall body. If we want, we could put this zipper on a separate layer. I think I'm going to keep it on this one. You can always move things around later or what have you. I'm just going to kind of make it click for pretty much every one of these folds. You know, there's one here, there's one here. And I'm going to go ahead and go to the top with this, even though we're going to have other stuff covering this. I'm just going to do it anyway. And this collar I'm going to just do in the collar shapes. And then this little tab will be its own thing too. So that's it for the torso layer. If we wanted to do details, we'll get back to those. Let's do the scarf, the neck part of the scarf here. So we can see this, we want this to be below the head, but it has to be in front of the hair in the back, and it has to be above the torso. So I'm going to drag the torso down to be below the head. And then now we can put our neck, or I'm sorry, our collar, which essentially is the neck, below the head and above the torso. So vector, and we'll call this scarf main. What was that sound?
Going to the post office.
Okay, but what was that sound?
The keys.
Gotcha. Scarf main. And then now I can come in and start dressing that up. Sorry, that was my roommate. And there we go, and there we go. All right, then I can come in to these points, peek them down, make them more round, whatever needs to be done. This one could be a little more round, I guess. And this one a little sharper. And so on. Okay, So that's going to be that. We can go in and add our lines, and oops, I forgot to change the color, but I've shown you guys how to do that. We're going to do that shortly. Make this one a little more here, like that. We can widen out our lines or narrow down the lines. And let's go ahead and make a couple more points for another line here. I'm not going to get it to all the way to the end like I have it. It can be problematic. You can do it. It's not a problem. But I just don't want to get into that in this very second. Okay, so with this neck piece on the correct layer that we're on, we're just going to click here on our select shape tool and grab it somewhere in here. Now, if you notice, it's only selecting that. And if I come over here and select this, it's not selecting anything. Sometimes that's just the way it selects. This may or may not work. We will find out, and I'll show you if there is a problem. But it may work just fine. So we're just going to come over and we're going to select the green while we have that selected. And yeah, it seems to be not a problem. So that works for me. If it ever is, you can come in here and delete your color, and I'll show you right here. You just click on the color, click delete. You can click on all these pieces, delete, delete, and then you're just left with the lines. That sometimes is necessary. The reason, because it creates them and connects them weird, it's because we've added lines to the edge after the fact. But you can fix that by just coming back in once you just have the outlines left after deleting the inner shapes. You can click on all of these outlines at once. Click here on both and then do create shape, and it will recreate that in a much more correct way. Now if we do go back and change our color to the right color, everything will just work better. It's the more correct way of doing it. And you'll see it looks absolutely the same as it did before without any issues. So sometimes that happens. You'll get a missing line, or it'll be the wrong color or whatever. Okay, so now we need to have the scarf tail is what I'm going to call it. So vector new here, we're going to call this scarf tail. And that scarf tail is going to be in front of the body and behind the neck, I think, to some degree. I mean, it is in front here. We can just draw it to go like so. There's 1,000 ways you can do it by breaking up this into two pieces to where part of this is in front of the lower half, but behind the upper half, whatever. But we're going to do it with one. So I think I'm going to do it with the tail completely behind the neck piece. So above the torso now, but behind the scarf mane is where we're going to drag this scarf tail. You can see here now the order on the scarf tail. That's going to be my new band name. We're going to start dragging out our points. I'm kidding about that being our band name. It is the Naked Dead. All right, so here we go. More and more points. And this will hide behind that other piece. We can come up once again, select this point, and Control P to peek that. We can go Control P to peek that, and Control P to peek this one, and you're good. So the tail end pieces here, very simple. If you use your graphics display, you can just whip these in here. I don't want to swap monitors at the moment, but I'm just going to click on it, and then click again to drag one out. Enter. You click on it here, then click again, and it drags it out for the next one, and so on. So I'm just going to make a bunch of these for the tail end of this guy. Could have put one right on that other point, so I'm going to undo that. I'm just going to click on that point, and it automatically, you don't have to select it twice is what I'm getting at. I'm going to put this here like this. And now we're going to make some more. Boom, boom, boom. Put another click and another click there, and everywhere, click, click, click it, and then you have to click again. It turns green, so you know that you can go. So the red, let me click another one so we can add. All right, hopefully that's making sense. Okay, and then for this one, it's already green, you see, so you can just add right away. And I think I might put another one right here. It looks like I meant for one to go there, and we'll just do that. Cool, so that scarf now is done. We have little details, but we'll wait on those. For the body, the arms, we can animate the order of the layers when we go and animate. That's not a problem. So I think for drawing this, I'm going to put these upper arms behind the torso. So behind the torso, but in front of the hair back, I'm going to select hair back, and I'm going to create a new layer, vector layer. We'll call this arm upper, and then you put the left or right at the end, whether it's an upper or lower and all that, and then the arm is what it is. This order of naming stuff keeps you out of trouble, trust me. All right, here we go. So about the elbow area, I'm going to make a rounded shape here and then continue up the arm. And then right about somewhere that it's intersecting the body, I'll make another rounded shape to kind of connect those. I'm going to go ahead and select my points that I want peaked, and I did a lasso selection there. You can turn that on right here. Control P, and then once again, I think I might go ahead and do these, and then with the others, I'm going to move these in just so I can get more of a rounded shape, like so. Just like that, so. Give it a little rounded. Now this way, when they overlap, there's a lot less chance of them flashing. That's the point. We can also remove these lines or just hide these lines. That way when they overlap, you'll never see them overlap either way. Now this is the wrong color, so we're going to go and select our color for that arm. And then we can just sample from our own color here by just clicking and dragging the eyedropper, and boom, we have the pink arm. So that's the upper. Now we need a forearm. Now the forearm is going to go in front of the torso. So if she crosses her arms over in front, you know, they'll always be in the front. You can always change the uppers if you need to. But I'm going to go arm. I'm going to just write forearm right. Forearm right, if I can spell. That's going to definitely be in front of the torso. Let's go ahead and put it in front of the scarf mane. We can even put it in front of the head, like so, just so that all of this can, you know, if she puts her hands up and stuff, it'll go in front of the entire face. And we're just going to do the same thing here. I'm going to make a shape like this, and in this one, we are going to want to make the cuff, but I'm going to do that in a separate piece. Keep these a bit rounded here. You can put as many points as you need. You really can, but the fewer the better, so you don't kind of overdo the need for those. There's no reason to have 50 points in a place where you can get away with 4. In fact, it'll make animation a lot harder if you have to move 50 points where you could have just moved 4 and had the same effect. So I highly recommend not doing that. Then we can come in with our hide edges tool and just hide these particular edges. That way when it bends, you'll never see those gaps happening. And if you do, you can fix those with another technique we use as well. So within this forearm, I'm going to draw the cuff here. And I'm going to make this, for now, I think, a separate shape. And we're going to keep these kind of rounded. So it doesn't matter exactly how these go. They will be hidden. And the way we do that is by selecting the shape again, coming up to draw and lower to back. And now it puts it behind this other shape. Perfect. And that's the forearm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the forearm right and the arm upper right. And before I do that, let's finish the hand, and then we can mirror it over. I'll show you how to do that. So let's go ahead and draw the hand. So behind the forearm right, above the head, another layer. This will be hand right. And then we can knock that out. So just coming from here. And you get used to doing these points. They kind of bend around and stuff in ways that are a little bit not 100% expected sometimes. But so I'm going to do like so. I'm going to adjust my curvature to kind of keep with that shape. That looks good. And we're going to fix the color. This will be kind of a sort of mint green or whatever it was, or this sort of turquoise blue, I guess it is. Just like so. Come back over and it should be. There we go. I'm going to do the thumb on a separate layer so we can move it separately easier. It's a little easier just to manage. So I'm going to go ahead, because it's something that is going to be moving independently a lot more. So thumb. And this can be grouped into the hand as well later. But so this will be the thumb. And I'm just going to kind of come from here. I put that point in the wrong spot, but we can fix that. And like so. And now I can move these around better. Like this. However they feel the best placement is. And we can hide this edge here so that nobody will see that ugly bit. And if we want, just to make this easier for looking at stuff, organizational, but also in movement, when we move the hand, we want the thumb to go with it. We're just going to click on thumb, and then we're going to shift click onto the hand. Right click that and go to group with selection, and it will group both those in a new group. We need to rename that group hand right. And then now when we move that hand, the thumb will move with it. But right now we have a problem because its rotational point is way up here and it needs to be down here. So we just click on this little plus here. This is the set origin. And we're just going to set it to right here. And now when we click on the layer again, you'll see the layer is contained to that area. All right, cool. We click on 0 and it'll reset some things, but evidently not artwork. So I'm going to go back and adjust that layer back into a better position. Okay, now that we have that, we got the hand, we got the forearm, and the all this here. We're going to go click on the forearm, we're going to click on the hand, and we're going to shift click as well on the, and we're not going to shift click, otherwise it will take everything in between. We're going to click on control, and then left click the arm upper to where it skips all that. We're going to right click, and we are going to say duplicate these layers, and then we're going to, with them all still selected, we're going to click this little button here that's going to flip those horizontally. Evidently it's not going to do it exactly as expected, but that's okay. I'm just going to make sure that this sort of doesn't look like a longer arm. Oh, there we go. That's much better. And then we're going to just click off everything, click on just the hand alone, and move it over to sort of be in the right place. So there we go. All right, so let's go on and do the skirt. Evidently there's a hair shadow, there's face shadows, all kinds of stuff. I didn't get to the body shadows while I was sketching it because this was more for getting the approval. But now let's get to the skirt, which is under the jacket. I'm going to close up these groups here, and you can see how it starts to clean up our overall look here. But let's go where our torso is, and this is going to need to be under the torso somewhere. Since the arms are probably going to come down over the skirt if they were to be long enough, I'm going to put everything above the hair back. So we're going to click on hair back and add a layer, and it will put it right above that one. We're going to say skirt. You could break this up into two shapes, left and right or whatever, if there were going to be a lot of turning, but you don't have to do that. Not for this anyway. And we're just going to come in and start adding points. I'm going to try and put as many as we need to account for these curves that are happening. So this one eventually will get peaked. This one will, both these will get peaked. And there's going to be a lot more points in this skirt because it's going to need to be able to deform better than the rest of the parts so far. And if you're coming along and you accidentally click off, or you're like if you accidentally push enter and you're not able to continue, just click on the last point again and keep going, and you'll be fine. So now I can just come up, follow these curves. And there we go. I'm going to Control P these points. And you can move any of these around if you think it's necessary. This will be just so that it doesn't get weird while animating later on. So it's something like that. And then, like I said, we'll come in if we need to and peek with Control P some of these other points, like this and this one, and of course this one and this one. Alright, and then we can come back in and put our upward lines here. Like so. And then taper off these a bit so they get smaller as they go up. Alright, cool. No shadows yet, but there's the skirt. Let's go ahead and put some legs behind that. So above the hair back, we're going to go with another vector layer. We're going to call this leg right. And we're going to just make a little rectangle essentially. This is all that needs to be made for that. It's just whatever's going to show in there. We can come in now and select the points, shift lasso. I'm lassoing, but I'm holding shift while I'm doing it. And Control P. Then we can click on the shape itself. And either we can select the same color as the face, which is probably the easiest. We can sample off the image, whatever you want to do. We're going to duplicate this one now. So right here on the leg layer, I'm going to right click and go to duplicate layer. I'm going to immediately rename that to leg L. And then with it selected, which it is, we're going to go to our layer here. You can see that the center of it is off. So let's go to leg right first and fix that one. We're just going to put our center of it right there. Leg L, put the center of it there as well. And then we're going to go back to the layer and I'm going to flip it horizontally and move it over for the other one. If it doesn't quite fit, that's just because I drew them a bit differently. But that works kind of there. It's a little skinnier, I guess. Cool. There's our legs. All right, on top of the leg, because the sock would be on top of it, we're going to do another layer, and this is going to be on top of leg L. So we're going to call this one sock L. Hopefully I spelled that one right. And then we're going to draw those points in. So the drawing portion of this is kind of, repetitive. It's the same kind of thing every time you do it. Nothing special and new. And we'll click on curvature and go and adjust those points to be a little more straight. And this one can be peaked. You can just click and drag those over to peak them, or you can hit Control P like we did before for all of these corner bits. And then come back in and draw in these lines here. And this line here. Generally, I would put 3 here. I don't think I'm going to be needing to do that, but that's what I would normally do. And I'm just going to make these a bit thinner than the others. Now we can come in and color this sock. So I'm just going to grab its outside. And you can see we have a problem again where we're only selecting that little bit. So the easiest thing to do is just grab that, hit delete, grab this, hit delete, grab this, hit delete, and now we're left with the kind of like the bare bones skeleton of the whole shape. But we want to select all of those, go into our create shape, make sure both is selected, and we hit create shape. And now it's got an inner and an outer, and we just need to go back to our select shape, and on the fill, this is where we'll choose the sock color. So while that's selected, we're going to come over to the image, sample the color from that, and then we're good to go. If we want now to make it easier, we can just duplicate this sock and flip it over and adjust our points, which is what I recommend. So we're going to duplicate that layer. I'm going to pull it down to where it's on top of the right leg. It's just for organization. We're going to rename it sock R. We know which one it is now. And with that layer selected, we're going to come in here to our layer tool here, transform layer. We're going to make sure that we, of course, fix the origin point. We need to do that on this one as well. There we go. So back on sock R, we're just going to flip that layer horizontally here. Go back to the move, the transform tool. Whoops. And we're going to click on the layer tool. And we're going to move the entire layer over. And then we're going to come in and move the points around to better match the artwork that's underneath that we're trying to copy. So I'm just going to get these in a better position like this. So these can be pretty much below that shoe line because they are going to be hidden behind the front of that shoe anyway. And just want to make sure where these points would be if they are on here at all. Looks like we don't have them on this side. But I'm going to go ahead and leave them. I'm going to get rid of this point right here though. Oops. Just this tip right there, and then this one can be a lot shorter. I think that works. And now we're going to move on to the shoes. So we just create another vector layer on top of that. This will be for the right foot, so shoe right. And then now we're going to knock that out. So I'm just going to do this, business. That's probably fine here. Like so. And we will have to put a line through here. And like I said, this may knock out what we're doing because of the line. I'm going to see if this is going to work. So this should, let's make it weld, auto weld. And I'm just going to snap it to this point. I probably shouldn't have done that because this is going to need to be a separate color, but we'll figure that out. And then let me go ahead and select the shape. I'm going to delete it, and then come back in here and create it all as one. So, but that's selected. We're going to go both, create shape. I did not create that one separately, which is what I was hoping. And then this one's just going to be a stroke and create the shape. That way it'll be two separate pieces. But we want this main one to kind of carry it, I think. I might have to make this sole a completely different object, and that is totally fine. But selecting this shape, and it looks like that's the case. Let's go back and fix what I've done wrong here. So I'm going to delete this guy. And I'm going to go ahead and delete that line going across. And we're just going to make this the upper portion of the shoe. And we're going to Control P and Control P. And I'm going to drag these to a better spot. Okay. All right. So we're going to click on it. We're going to do a both and create shape. And now we have to select the color for that shoe. So let's go ahead and find, it's just going to be that same, what I call Barbie pink. Boom. There you go. And then we need the little gray portion for the bottom. So on the same layer, it's still just the shoe. I'm going to create the sole here. It's a creation of the sole. And I'm going to go beyond where it needs to be because this will be hidden by the other, and this way it won't weld to the other line. And I'm going to grab, oops, not all of them. I'm just only going to grab one. Control P, just in these corners to kind of tame those from doing crazy stuff. And then I'm going to move them in. And now this layer needs to be behind the other. So we're just going to select this one. And it's not a layer. This is actually all on the same layer. But this drawing layer basically needs to move to the back like so. And now we'll have that. And for the color, we'll make sure this one is selected. And its color now needs to be the color of the sole. My soul, it's the color of poop. No, the color of the sole right here. Soul of a liar is black like poop. And then we're going to take the shoe layer. We're going to duplicate that one. We're going to change the name to L. And we're going to, of course, grab the layer and flip it horizontally and move it over. Now you can see its origin point is completely wrong. So we need to change that for both shoes. Something here, something here. Shoe L, we can readjust all of its points if we want to, or whatever you want. I think it looks fine. I'm just going to move it over a little bit. I think it's a little too far that way. You can even flatten it out some. Whatever looks good. But we're going to make sure that the socks, which is like this one, is behind the shoe. Cool. All right, so that, and the leg needs to be behind the sock. Like that. Okay. So that's all good. Now it's a matter of shading on these areas, and it's a matter of detail on the coat and the detail on the face. So let's go ahead and get our detail of the coat. I'm just going to go back up to the torso. We're going to add a new layer, and I'm going to say collar right, and we're going to come in and we can pre-select our color, so we can either select that pink. I think the darker is the better, so I'm just going to select it from our image. And if you're wondering why I'm redoing this instead of just bringing the character in and doing everything, I did not draw it in Illustrator or Photoshop. This was a single image file, no layers, and so I'm having to redo it to break up all these body parts and also have it in a vector format. So it's necessary for what we're doing here. So the collar right, I'm just going to trace the collar straight up here. You can put it behind everything, no problem. Go in and peek your corners, which are going to be, oops, these two. And these two, and, well, maybe not this one. So this will go Control M, and it resets its curve. And for this one, we'll do a Control P. And then we can, of course, duplicate that one. Change its name to L. And then, of course, grab the layer, flip it, move it over, and change the origin point for both of these to something more appropriate. And then the little taggy thing probably should go in the front. So above the collar L, we'll go ahead and say create another vector. And we'll call this the zipper. I'm just going to call it zipper. And then we draw this little thingy. I did not set the color for it yet. Something about like this. Perfect. And then we can change its color, or, you know, adjust a couple of points, whatever we feel the need to do. There we go. And then we also need to draw that center one. And so this will require drawing it, deleting all the shapes, and then recreating them. So I'm just going to make a little sort of oval hole there. And now what we want to do is come in and select shape. Delete this one, select this shape, delete it. We're left with the wireframes basically. And so we're going to click on the line here and then the inside one. It will create that hole for us. This is why I did that. And we're going to say create shape. And now it's got the hole in it. And then what we're going to do is come in and select, you know, that color. And I'm just going to pick like a sort of a gray. It doesn't have to be the exact color or anything. And we'll say OK. It appears to me this does not have a hole, and I think it's partially because of the thickness of the stroke around it. So if I select this portion here, maybe the stroke for it all, yeah, it needs to be a little smaller. That way this hole shows up more like the hole should. Cool. Either way that works. And now, of course, we need to create the face. And that will be the last thing we do before we do any kind of shadows. So, the good old face. Let's just click on our layers, find out where the head layer is right here. So above the head layer, because all these things need to go on the face, we're going to create a new layer. We're going to start with the eyebrows. So brow right. Yes, I know I spelled that wrong. There we go. Brow right. Pretty simple to do. Just a few points. It's a very simple eyebrow. Then we go back and peek the corners on this one. So these and these, holding Shift and Control P. Or you can use this little button right here. And this one is the rounder, the smoother one. So now we need to grab our eyebrow color. So I'm going to grab the Select Shape tool, zoom into our eyebrow, and sample that color. Obviously, the best way to do this now is to duplicate that layer, change its name to L, flip it after creating our origin for both of them. So back on the L, we're going to grab the layer, flip it over, move it in place. Simple. Now we move on. Let's do the mouth. So vector. This will just be if there's multiple mouths or open mouths or syllables, this will be just the simple initial closed mouth. I'm just going to give it like 4 points so it can at least smile. Let's make sure that we create the shape as well. This is just going to be a stroke. Create shape. Go back to the select shape. This could probably be at least a 3 or so. 4. And I'm going to move these into a little better position. And I went with a little bit thicker just so you can see it better, but I might change my mind later. This is going to be the nose, or the nose, whichever way you want to spell that. This is nose 1. We could have multiples given how the head turns or whatever. And I'm going to get our shape there and this shape here. I guess I don't have this to auto whatever, but it looks like it's set to it. I don't know why it's not working. But with those selected, go to our Create Shape tool, and we'll just use a stroke for those and say OK. We can then come back with our line width tool and thin out the ends We can even thin out a few of these in the middle, especially on the bottom little smaller one. This kind of gives you the drawn stroke feel, like that. Okay, and then now the eyes. These are very interesting. We're just going to duplicate it once we make them, but these are going to be a little confusing. Not horribly, but just enough to not make the most sense. I'm going to move the nose and mouth down below the eyebrows, just because logically your eyebrows would be above. If you tilt your head forward, the eyebrows would cover up your mouth. So we're going to create a new layer above the nose here. This is going to be just the outline of the eye that eventually will be used to cut the hole for the eyeball. This is going to be, you know, I'm going to put opening. I've done this a lot, naming it this way because it just makes sense to me. We want the inside to be whatever color you want because it's going to get cut out anyway, but we're going to use white just because it's what you'd expect. And I'm just going to create the shape of the eye. This is essentially what will be blinking, closing, etc., and obscuring the iris and anything else inside. And of course we want to use the peaking on these two corners, so Control P. And I'm going to make the stroke a little bit thinner, so I'm going to grab that. You can see our fill is white, and I'm going to make the stroke about maybe a 1 or 2. We'll just try 2 for now. I think that's fine. Okay, and now this is just a flat white shape with a dark line around it, essentially. If you wanted to come in here and like if they had mascara on or something like that, which probably isn't appropriate for kids, but you can make this part just a little bit thicker anyway, and maybe this part a little bit thicker, and it tends to make the eye have a little more, not alluring quality, but it makes it a little more interesting. You can even do maybe even more across the top here. That probably looks better. It feels like almost like eyelashes, even though they're not drawn. So now we're going to do, on top of this, it's going to seem weird, but we're going to do the iris. And it's going to look like a circle sitting on top of everything, but it will not stay that way. Just draw it that way. But you're going to make a circle. I'm going to adjust the size and where these lines essentially fit. Something like that. And then we were gonna, let's just grab it and call or change the color. Let's add a stroke to it, of course. And we're gonna change the color to like the blue that these are supposed to be. So with that one selected, we're gonna grab the fill color here. You can also say I made a little shadow here. So we're gonna grab the lighter of these two colors and move back over. And now we can see that that's there. Don't worry about it sticking out. It won't here in a second. And now we're going to make, on that iris layer, I guess, a pupil layer. You can always also make it on another layer. Let's go ahead and do it on another one to avoid confusion. We'll call this pupil. And now we'll make a circle. And to make a perfect circle, you're just going to drag and then hold shift. And then we're going to let go of that and move it into position you want it to be in. And then, of course, we can come over into the create shape, do with just fill, because it's going to be solid black, and we go create shape. And if it isn't the right color, it's because you didn't select the right color. So I'm going to select it one more time and go select my color to be black. And there you go. Now, how you get the lid and all that to go over the eye, without having this behind the eye and all that, you're going to want to group this together. So we're going to take the eye opening and shift click all the way up to pupil to where we have all three of these at the same time. You're going to right click and go to group with selection and rename that group to eye right. And then in here we're going to double click this eye right layer. You're going to come up to masking. And then right here, we're going to go to hide all, and it's going to wind up hiding everything that's sticking out. So we're going to say OK, and you can see what happens. But now we're still obscuring the actual lines of the outline. So we're going to go down to the bottom layer here, double click it, and on masking we'll go to exclude strokes, and it will hide that. So it takes a minute to get used to doing that, but it's the best way to do this all the time. So now we're going to change my origin point to the middle here of all these layers, just so when they move they're kind of contained there. And then the eye, of course, as well, we'll do like this. That way when you select the eye layer, you can move it or whatever you need to do. The lines of this eye, I think I'm going to leave this maybe not in the nose, but just like on the face. So let's go back to the head, and then I'm just going to select or create this line like so. Doesn't need to move with the eye. And then, of course, because I didn't have the auto stroke turned on, which I did, so I don't know why it's not working. I'm going to go into here to the Create Shape tool, click on this line, and we're going to go with stroke, and we're going to say Create Shape, and that should all be good. Go ahead to our Line Width tool, and just from the ends, maybe knock those down a little bit, like that. Cool. There's one eye. So with that, we're going to take that eye layer in the folder, the actual group, and we're going to right click and duplicate that, and we're going to rename that to L. Don't forget to rename these guys inside if they need it, but we're going to come over here now and flip it and move it over. Make sure you get it in the right spot. We'll need to also do that with this face line. So go back to head, select just this line with your selection or move tool, like so. And I'm just going to copy now, Control C, Control V, and you can see it's a different, actual different line here selected. We're going to flip it using the flip horizontally, and then move it over like that. So now I think the mouth needs to be a little adjusted, so I'm going to go here and just pinch the corners in to start with, like this. Not all the way, like this, maybe slightly here because it looked a little bit wide, so I think that works. And this is the complete figure without how to learn all this. Lots of experimentation. Sorry if I didn't get back to you quickly. But yeah, lots and lots of learning, lots of tutorials online, and teaching myself. McCoy Buck, look at his videos for sure. There's quite a few people that do some great stuff. I believe it's McCoy Buck, yes. Yeah, because there's another guy who does Blender stuff that I follow too. But McCoy Buck is one of the guys I learned a lot of this stuff from. So now within here, this is just for the drawing, right? We're going to need to do our shading, and we're going to teach you guys how to use some masking and stuff for things like, you see this shadow happens here and it cuts off as it goes beyond the face. If you were just to draw that in there like this and then turn the head, you'd have to move every one of those little points every single time to make sure it lined up with the edge of the face. But with using masking, you don't have to do that. So let me show you how that's done. We're going to come back over here and we're going to draw a shape for the face. We're basically going to create the shadow that runs along the hair and the side of the face first. So on the head layer, we're going to click and add a new layer. You don't want to do this on the same layer as the head layer. But so we're going to call this shadow. The reason why is you cannot make a mask or this kind of mask on that same layer within the same layer with a bunch of shapes. You have to do it on a different layer because it will apply to layers in a group. So with this shadow, I am going to turn back on my little trace image I had here. Not sure why I'm not seeing it. Oh, because that's all there was on that layer, huh? Yeah, let me turn up the opacity here. I want to be able to see the shadow where I had it lined up there or laid out. Once again, back here above the head layer, we have this shadow layer we just created. And I'm just going to draw out where I want that to be. So this will be like this. Remember, this layer will run under the hair, but it will run on the top of this. But look, watch what I'm doing. I'm just making it very randomy, kind of happenstance-y to the outside here, because you don't need to worry about that outside edge once we do a certain thing to it. Let me peak these points so they're not wonky at the ends. Like so. That's fine. And now the color is wrong, but we'll work on that in a second. And what you want to do is just right here where our head and shadow are, we're going to click the head layer, shift click the shadow layer, right click and group with selection. Now what this is going to do is put those in a group. We're going to rename this head, and then double click the group, and here we'll have a masking tab, and we come down and we just click on hide all, and it's going to keep anything going outside of the head shape from showing up. So hide all and OK. You see how that happened? And then now we're going to go back down to the head layer at bottom, so because right now is actually messing with our outlines. Double click on it and go to masking, and make sure that you click on exclude strokes so it leaves those alone. So now we're going to change the color of that shadow to match the color of the shadow over here. So I'm just going to grab my shadow layer here, make sure we grab the select shape tool like so. When we get the ability to select the fill color, we're just going to come up here and grab the eyedropper and borrow that color. And now we have it here. Now we have an outline we don't want, so we're going to reselect that shape and turn the stroke for it off. And now we have that lovely shadow, just like that one. So I'm going to go through now and create the shadows for the rest of the face parts, like around the eyes. And I'm not sure if these are the same color. I think I have these a little more peachy, but that's fine because we could put the shadows, all the shadows on the same layer, and even make them different colors. So we'll leave them in the shadow layer. And we're just going to come over and add some points here to draw these. I drew these with a stylus, you know, on my graphics display. And you can go right behind the eye on this because these won't show up. They'll be behind all the stuff that's in front of them. Go figure. And get those in. And you can see it's got a stroke on it again, which we don't want. When I come in, select those points and peak them. Select these points here and peak them. Just for hitting Control P. Make sure you don't grab all of them like I just did. Control P. That's probably okay there. We're going to select the shape here with the Select Shape tool, and we're going to turn the stroke off for that. Right now it's the same color as this one. It's hard to tell because we have that other image on underneath it, but let me just turn that off and you can see it looks just as good. So I'm going to leave it that color. It can be a different color. It can be a more rosy color or whatever, you know. Okay, cool. So now let's go ahead and take this piece within the shadow layer, because we can select this shape or the Select Shape tool, and we can copy that. We can paste it, Control C, Control V, and then flip it here and drag it over to the other side. Just something along those lines. And then, in fact, that one can probably move back over just a little bit, something like that. And then we need to make the little nose shape here, right here. So within that same shadow layer, we'll just copy that shape out. Now we can turn off the stroke before we create this if we want to, which would probably have been a good idea. But we come back over here, select it, turn the stroke off of it, and we're pretty much done anyway. Cool, so that is that. Now if we wanted to create them for the hat, we can, and we need to do the one for the hair here. So we're going to go to this hair back, all the way to the bottom. We're going to create another layer here, and we're going to call this shadow. Now right now this is not within the same group, and it will need to be shortly. I just want to make sure back on the head that we do have those grouped, which we do, and I'm going to go ahead and close that group up. There we go. It just keeps things more organized the more you do that. We've created a lot of layers in a small amount of time here. Been going for an hour and 15. That's fine with me if it's fine with y'all. And so now I'm going to create the shadow for the hair. And just going to come from here and sort of follow my points to a degree. This was all hand sketched originally, so it's more shaky on purpose. I'm going to go ahead and go lower than the actual drawing, and you'll see that when you mask it, it doesn't matter. It all comes away very nicely. So we'll just click this closed. Forgot to turn off my stroke again. Click that. I'm going to turn the stroke off, and then the hair color for this we're going to borrow. So with it selected, you can see the little checker pattern. I'm going to come in and just select that, and there is our hair shadow. Perfect. We need this little waist shadow, but before we do that, the shadow and the hair back here, both of these, you can just shift select them, right click and go with group with selection. We're going to call this hair back, and then we're going to double click on that layer to open up the layer settings, go into the new masking tab, go down to hide all and say OK. Chops off that area. And then of course we need to go to the bottom layer of the hair back, double click it, go to masking and exclude strokes to bring all of the strokes back to where they're not grayed out or colored over or anything like that. And we have her perfectly done here. I think the only one we have left before we do anything on our own after this is just that little waist shadow. So we're going to come back down to the skirt. I'm going to close this up here. Go to the skirt. We're going to add a new layer above it. I'm going to call this shadow as well. Now remember, all these shadows I'm making are grouped in their own groups of, what they're shadowing. And so you don't have to worry about it being called shadow 52 times and not being able to tell what's what. So on the shadow layer for this particular group that will exist, we're just going to create this guy. I'm going to peek that point eventually. See, I'm not using 32 points. It's really just the ones you really need to make sure you make that shape. I am going outside of the lines on purpose. And now with that color selected here, we're going to go over and sample the shadow color from the dress like this. You can see that it's there. However, it's over the top and outside the lines. I'm going to select it. We're going to turn off the stroke for it so it doesn't have the outline. And then in our layers here, we're going to go and select the skirt and shift click the shadow to where you're both selected. Selecting both of them, right click, group with selection. We're going to call this one skirt again, and double click it to change the properties. And in the masking tab, click on hide all and OK. And to keep our outlines from disappearing, we'll also go into the bottom layer of the skirt itself, the actual object here. Double click it, go to masking, and go to exclude strokes, and OK. And there you go. All of the drawing for this that was drawn before is done. Now we can just make up some new shadows and stuff for this before we do any rigging. So I'm going to go up to the top. I'm going to turn off our little guide drawing actually for both of them now that I think about it. So both of these can just be deleted because that was just my references. So we'll delete those. And within her now, I'm going to go ahead and make, let's do the shadow of the arm. I also need to change this cuffs to match the collar color. So let's do that real quick on her arm. Where's my arms? The forearm R2 needs to be called forearm L because we don't have two rights. It doesn't make a wrong anyway. No, the forearm right here, we're going to go ahead and select this, and we're going to sample its color from the color. We're going to do the same thing for forearm right. And we're going to sample the collar color. It's hard to say. Cool. Okay, so let's make a shadow for this arm. I'm not going to worry about the hands. They don't think they need shadows. They're so small at the moment. And it's a very simple character. So we're going to go ahead with our forearms. And right on the forearm right, I'm going to make another layer right above it. We're going to call this shadow. And I'm going to sort of draw this out. And it doesn't have to be perfect because this will be masked within the shape. Like so. We will turn off the stroke for that, which I need to kind of get back to. And the funny thing is, the color, well, it's probably a little strong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sample the pink color. I'm going to go into the color there, and you can see it's right here. And I'm just going to drop this down to be more of a shadowed version of that color. So we say, okay, there you go. And then we're going to want to group these. So we take the shadow and the forearm, right click, group with selection. We're going to call this forearm right. And we're going to double click on the layer, come over here to masking and hide all. Okay. Then, of course, the bottom layer of the actual shape, masking, exclude strokes. Okay, so now we just have this cool little shadow just on the forearm, which we also need to do the same thing for the upper arm. So let's find our upper arm, which is going to be much lower. Upper arm, which this needs to be changed to upper arm L. I got a little ahead of myself. But upper arm right. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to create a new layer. This will be called shadow. You guessed it. And within that, I'm going to now make a shadow that essentially meets the same place as the other. So just something like this. I think I'm only using 4 points. You can use as many as are needed. And so I'm going to click on the shape. Make sure we turn the stroke off. And that didn't sound right. And I'm going to go ahead and take the shadow and the arm upper. Shift click them, right click, group with selection. We're going to call this upper right, arm upper right. And double click on that to make sure that we can turn on masking and hide all and OK. And then we go down to the bottom layer, masking, exclude strokes, and there's the shading for that arm. Seems like a lengthy process, I know, but here's how you make this work even faster. Is we already have this other arm done, the left arm. We haven't grouped any of this other arm or anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the hand and the let me just rename this. I'm getting confused here. Forgot to rename my left hand. So we're going to take the right hand, the left hand, and the left forearm, and the left upper arm, and we're just going to delete them. And the reason why is because now that we've got all this shading here, I'm going to just copy and mirror it over. I want to make sure our center of our layer is here, which isn't correct because that was for the hair back. Let me find my arms here. So this is the forearm right, the hand right, and the upper arm right. Now that we've done that, we can just duplicate those layers and put them wherever we need to, and then we can flip them. So now that we move the layers, it's going to be a little janky at first, but you can see we can just pop this back in where it goes, something like that, and then take the hand by itself here and move it where it goes. Looks good. And then rename them. So that's a lot easier than going back and doing all that shading and stuff again. So on anything that says R2, we'll go back and put L, and we'll be done with that. And then now the arm upper to be arm upper L. Okay. So the body probably should have some shading on this side. The skirt, it's probably fine the way it is here. The legs, we can just make them a little darker to where they match the shadow instead of the face since they're so short. Then the shoes could have a couple of small shadows, both on the character right side, camera left side. But let's go to the torso. We're going to add a vector layer above it called shadow. And we're going to draw a shadow using the shadow color of our arms. So I'm just going to pre-select the shadow color. And on that shadow layer, just probably about, I don't know, maybe here down, I am going to make a little kind of roundy line like this that kind of follows the shape of our coat. Those lines, and then with that I'm going to close it up and then go through here and peek those corners and select the actual shape and then make sure we turn off the stroke for that. With the shadow and the torso now selected, by shift clicking on the right click it, and we will go to group with selection. Rename this torso again. And on that torso layer we'll double click it, we'll go to masking. We'll hide all. Okay. And then we have to go to the bottom layer where the torso actual shape is. Click on the masking tab and exclude strokes again. And now we have a shadowed torso. And I think what I'm going to do too is come in and peek those points where it goes down into those grooves. So this will be this guy, and you can shift click these points here and here. And we will now control P. And it'll be a little better of a, following the shape. We could do a shadow under this scarf here, but I think I'm going to wait on that. Let's just take the leg shapes now and make those dark as the face shadow. So I'm going to go through here and select my select shape for that color there. And then we can sample our own shadow from the face. We'll do the same thing with the leg right and sample that from the face. That way that makes a little more sense. Now the shoes could get a little shadow, and I'm going to do these. We could copy and paste that shoe again, I suppose. But let's go ahead and go to where the shoes are. Just looking for shoes. Looking for shoes. Close the torso. Shoe R. Said close the torso like it was some kind of operation. And I'm going to create a new layer above that shoe called shadow. And this gets kind of second nature. It's very repetitive, I realize, but it goes pretty quickly normally. You're probably wondering, oh man, I don't want to do all that over and over and over, but it's totally worth it. If you want to be an animator, it's necessary. So, I mean, come on. At least you're not drawing frame by frame doing this method. That's all I got to say. All right, so once again, peek the corners, grab the color, turn the stroke off of that. We're going to select the shape, and then we can draw this down to be more of a shadowy color like we did before, or you can sample it from the arms, and you can see we still have our problem. The reason why is this is not grouped. So shoe and shadow, we're going to group those together, and we're going to rename it as shoe right. Double click on it to bring up the properties. Go to masking, hide all, OK. And then in the bottom layer here, we'll double click, bring up masking, and exclude your strokes. Not a problem. So I'm going to go and delete this shoe over here. So let's close this. Go to shoe left. Right click and delete it. The reason being we're going to take shoe right. Right click it. Duplicate it. We're going to rename it to shoe left. Shoe left, and shoe never came back. And we're going to go over here and flip it and move it over to where the shoe left goes. Make sure this goes in front of your leg and your sock. Sounds weird. And we're also going to redo the origin points. So shoe and shoe right, boom. Now, before we rig, it's always a good idea to go through and do all of your origin points. It will take a minute, but it's totally worth it. So I'm just going to check. I think most of these are kind of set up right, but I am probably wrong. So there's the hat. We're just going to stick it there. The her right or the hair right. There left. These are all not done. The forearm left, which will start about here. Forearm right, which will start about here. You want to put it in the joint that it's going to pivot from. The hand, that one's already done. So is that one. The brow, looks like they're good to go. I think I did all the face pieces already. Nose is not done though. Let's just check that. Eye, there we go. Mouth, not done. Those become pretty important. The head, you want this kind of at the base where it's going to pivot on the neck. Scarf mane, that's fine. Right here in the center. Scarf tail, pretty much at the top. The zipper, yes, you want it pretty much on the top of that. Collar, yep, that one's already done. That one's already done. The torso is going to be here at the base of the torso. The arm, upper left, is going to be about here where it's going to bend from. The upper right is going to be the same. The skirt is going to be pretty much at the waist or root point here. The shoe left, the sock, yeah, we got those. Leg, shoe right, sock, leg. Okay, the only thing I haven't done is gone into each one of these individual layers, but I'm going to wait on that. If we need to, we need to. If we don't, we don't. So let's make shadows for the head and the hat, because we haven't done it for the hat yet. And I think that will look a bit better. We're going to have to do this before we... You don't have to, but we're going to do this before rigging because it'll just make this a lot easier on us. So hat... this has multiple layers in it, so these are going to have to be broken out. I told you to do this all together, but now I'm going to say stop, go back. We're going to cut these apart for... and this is how to do that, how to make these become individual layers. So we're going to leave the base of the hat as its own layer, I think. Let's use the pink base of that. So what I'm going to do is leave that, and then we're going to cut this rim away. I'm going to edit, cut, and then we're going to make a new layer here, vector. We're going to call this brim. And we're going to come over here and right click, and if it doesn't right click, just go ahead and do Control V and paste that back into that new brim layer. Now these are on two separate layers. Go back to the hat layer again and select the ball points here. And we're going to go Control X to cut that. We're going to go and create a new layer. We're going to rename that layer ball. I think that's what it's called. And we're going to just say Control V to paste it back on its own layer. So now the hat is in three different layers. We got the hat, we have the ball and the brim. I'm going to put the ball on top just because in the image it is. It doesn't matter. It just needs to be above the actual pink hat layer. And so with those, we can now come in here, right click on shift click and right click on them, group with selection, and we're going to rename this to hat. Now it's got a little hat group. So we're going to make some shadows for this. And so the hat is only going to have a shadow underneath this ball. You could make the shadow on or below the ball on the ball layer, but I don't recommend that. We also want to make our origins correct. So this one for the hat, that's fine. The brim, you can see that one's totally off. So we're just going to select and go here. And for the ball, it's totally off. So we're going to go here. Because we recreated these in new layers, we're going to have to make new origin points for them. And the hat is wrong too. So we'll just correct and put it there. So let's go with the ball. We're going to click onto the hat layer to make the shadow for the ball, because that's what the shadow is actually going to be on. I'm going to make a layer right above hat called shadow. Oops, helps if you click on it and then type. And now we'll make a little, just a small little bit here, more to one side than the other, because this is where the light's going to be casting down that way. We're going to click on this shadow. We're going to turn the stroke off of it. And we're going to select a darker than pink color here. So we're going to click on here, select the pink, and then go into that little color chit thing here, selector. Bring that down to where we have a darker color like that. We're also going to want to make that shadow and hat a group within the group. So we're going to click on hat and shadow, right click that dude, group with selection, and yes, you can do that. And we're going to call this hat main with the shadow and hat in it. On hat main, we're going to double click it, go into masking, hide all, okay, and it will cut that out. We need to go into hat now and go to masking and exclude strokes where those come back. There we go. Okay, and you see we have now the cool little shadow under that ball. Subtle, but it is necessary for this to work or to look good. We probably should put a rim under the hat here as well. Now we could put it on the face and the hair and do all those separate things, but for just ease of use, I'm going to try and put it on the hat brim layer. Now granted, we will have problems with it sticking out, so maybe I'm talking a bunch of garbage here. So let me think. We probably should put it on those hair sections and that face section separately. So let's do that. I'm going to close up the hat layer. I'm going to come down here to hair right, which is this little bit here. Right above it, we're going to make a new layer. Call this shadow. Like I said, it becomes a routine after a while. It's not as tedious as it sounds. This is going to be a pretty thin little shadow, so I'm just going to go across, up, just like about 8 points, and down. We are going to, you don't need to peek any corners, but I'm going to go ahead and peek this corner because it's kind of making that weird bulge there. Might as well do this one too. Heck, let's just do all the corners. That way we control this better. Now that's weird because it's the wrong color to start with, but also because you can see it, it's not been masked yet. So on the shadow and the hair right, we're going to select both of those. We're going to right click. We're going to go with group with selection, and on here I'm going to put hair right. Now double clicking on that group, the masking tab, hide all, and it's going to chop that off within the hair. On the bottom layer inside that group of hair right, I'm going to go to masking and exclude strokes and say OK. Now it's the wrong color, but everything else is correct. So we're going to click on that hair right, the little shadow here with our select shape tool, like so. We're going to try and figure out I'm sorry, we need to click on the shadow layer of that. So I'm going to click here and you can see how that's working. We turn the stroke off. And now we need to find our shadow color, which is going to be the same color as this shadow. So I'm just going to come down here and sample that. And now when we click away, we can see we have the nice hair shadow. It's all inside the lines contained and everything else. We're going to do the same thing for the next one. So I'm going to close this up, go to hair left. We're going to create a layer right on top. Call this shadow. And within that layer, we're now do the same thing. But this one will be the correct color and everything already. I'm going to turn off auto stroke. It'll save us a step. And we'll just come over here and same thing. Make a few points. Boom. You can see that we don't have that stroke on the outside of it now. I'm going to come in here and peek those corner points. And with that selected, we're going to, we're going to go over here, select the hair and the shadow layer, right click, group with selection. This will be called hair left. We're going to double click on the layer, go into masking, hide all. Okay. And then we're going to come down to hair L, masking, exclude strokes. and click OK. And there you go. We have the shadows for the hair. We could put one here, but we've already got this one, so we might as well just drag the edge of that one over. You'll see what I mean here. On the head layer, we go into the shadow layer we already have. You can see right here. We can add another point right here and another one right here that we can drag across. We can drag this one over, and then we can take this guy and either peak it or whatever we want to do. But I'm going to go ahead and do the peak. And now we have this one looking good. We can peek that one as well just for better control. There we go. Everything looks good. And now all that would be left was nothing. Okay, that is all of our shadows. Those are all of our shadows for now for this little girl character. So the next thing to do is close everything up just so we can see what we've got. It's a little simpler to look at. We're going to group all of these groups of all these layers together now. So I'm going to select the top one, scroll down, shift select the bottom one, right? I'm going to scroll back up at the top or whatever and right click and come down and select to group with selection. This makes a entire group of all of it. I'm going to call this girl. Now, within this girl group, we're going to double click it. We're going to right click it and come down to convert to bone. Now this layer is a bone layer, which means we can put a skeleton in it and then start figuring out how to attach it to all of our other layers. Hopefully this is making sense. If you're watching, say hi. I like that kind of stuff. I'm sitting here in the dark. I apologize for that. I think it's because there's a really bright window next to me. So if I move this, there we go. That's a little bit better. Hopefully you're following along okay with everything. I think if I move this monitor slightly, I'll get a better... there we go. Much better. All right, so with that, how do we add the bones to this guy, girl? Well, the first thing, we're going to be on the bone layer we just created, and we're going to add this, we'll click on this add bone tool, and I'm just going to make a bone that sticks out like so, and this is kind of the handle for the whole body. Okay, and then while that one is red, which means it's active, we're going to add another bone that comes about halfway, and then the rest of the way up to the neck. And then from there, we're going to click another time and drag up. Whoops, yep, let's undo that one. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. We're going to click and drag up from the tip of that one to about somewhere here, wherever you can imagine the head connecting to the neck. And I'm going to just drag straight up from there. You don't have to make it go all the way through, just enough to where you know that's the head and how it's going to bend things. Now, if you use your up arrow on your keyboard and tap it a couple times, we're going to go back to this main bone, which is called the root bone. And with it highlighted in red, we're going to still be on the add bone tool. And I'm going to make a bone here, imagining there's a leg in here. And then from here, I'm going to let go and click again and dragging out another bone. And then let go and click again and drag out another bone for the foot. Now use your up arrow and go 1, 2, 3. And here we are back at the root bone. And I'm just going to come down here, imagining this is where the knee joint would be. And clicking again here to the foot, letting go and adding in another click here to create another bone like so for the foot. Now we're going to go up, 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 and I'm just going to go over here to my select bone tool and select this chest bone. And what I want to do is draw a bone from about the shoulder to the elbow. So we're going to add one here to here, and we're going to click and drag again from here to here, and we're going to click and drag again from here to the end of the hand. With this hand bone selected, we're going to draw another bone that comes from the base of the thumb to the tip of the thumb. So now we're going to click the arrow key on the keyboard up to about 4 times, and do the same thing on the other side. So just come to the elbow, click and drag to the wrist, click and drag to the tip of the hand. Go. While that one is selected, we're going to draw or drag another arrow from here to the base, from the base of the thumb to the tip of the thumb. Alright, not going to worry about the hair just yet because this will involve probably 1 or 2 bones because it's so long. And that's going to be our basic skeleton. Now it will not do anything until we start attaching it to stuff. So I'm going to go through some basics here real quick. If we want to move a bone, we're going to wiggle it with this manipulate bones tool. But before we do that, we want to make sure all the strength is off of these bones because these are being used in a way that does not require bone strength. So to do that, we click on the select bone tool. We circle all of the bones in our character here. We come down here to the bone strength tool, click on it. You can see the bone strength. We're going to click and drag to the left and all that strength goes away. Now we can click away or click on the select bone tool and click away, and those bones will not affect anything. If we wanted to move this, we would click over here on the manipulate bones tool and wiggle it back and forth, but you see it's not moving anything but the bones, and it does affect the other bones attached to it, which is cool. And if we get it all janked out and you're like, oh, well, now what do I do? Just click on frame 0 again and it will kind of reset that. Alright, with that said, let's attach this bone and the head pieces to this bone. This is a certain technique here right now that we're only using for things like the head called binding layers. So we're going to come down to the head layer right here. This head layer and everything inside of it, like the shadow and the head, will be selected when you select the top layer or the group. So we're going to click on this button next called bind layer. We have the bones selected, but you don't have to. But we have the layer selected in this case, which makes the difference. We're going to click on bind layer, and then it's going to let us select a bone to bind that head layer to. So we'll just come back over here to the head bone and click it. It will turn a thick line red, telling us that it is now bound to that. So when we move it with the manipulate bones tool here, the head and shadows of the head will move together. So congratulations, you've rigged your first part. So to get this aligned again, click on frame 0 again. Now we want to also link other parts of this head to the head bone. So right now we're going to go with the brows. So if I click on the brow left and then we go to that same, it'll change positions here, but we click on that same bind layer button and we make sure we click on the head bone, it'll bind this brow layer to that head bone. We click on brow right and we click on bind layer, which we're still selecting on. We click on the head bone, it binds that eyebrow, and so on. You don't want to do this for everything, but in this case, this is how I typically do this. So the eye left, layer, group, we will click on the head layer, head bone for that. The eye right, we can click on the head bone for that. The nose, we can do this as well. And the mouth as well. If these were groups of mouths and groups of noses, we can do the same thing with the main top group layer like we did for the eyes. Okay, so that means now when we move the head with the manipulate bones tool, which is now down here, if we move this, the head and the eyes and brows all move with that. Hit frame 0 to go back. And now we need to start doing the other parts. So I'm going to go to the top and kind of work my way down if I can. So the hat, let's use the group of the hat, not the layers inside of it, but just the hat group. And we're going to use that same binding method with the bind layer to the head bone. Once again, when you move now, the hat will go with the head. So if we click back on the select tool or frame 0, it will readjust. We're going to go with hair right. That should only be bound to this bone as well. So we're going to click on bind layer, select the bone. Hair left, select the bone, and so on. But now we're at the forearm. This is totally different. We're going to start doing what's called point binding. So with this forearm, we don't want to do anything with the group. We want to open it up. We have the shadow and the forearm layer. Let's start with the forearm layer here, and you can see when you click on it, it highlights. It might be hard to see in the video, but this is a green highlighted arm for the forearm. And what we're going to want to come do is there's right over here in this new menu, when you click on a layer, is this select bone tool here. You will click on the forearm bone, then you'll come over and click on the bind points tool. Now this is going to let you select this bone, and then now you're going to select this tool to tell it what points to bind to that selected bone. So right now we're going to make sure that, think about it this way, when this bone moves, what moves with it? So I'm going to circle these points here. Yeah, all of these pretty much. Okay, so you just have to pretty much decide what points will move when that bone moves. I selected these because I left the edges undone on both ends, because I want, when this bone moves, these to stay. This bone moves, it will move the hand bone, but when the hand bone moves, it will move these as though it's attached, kind of stretching. You'll see. So we go ahead and click on bind points, and it will bind these points to this bone, and you can tell because they will be the same color as the bone you have selected. On the same layer though, the forearm layer, I want to click now to select bone. We're going to select a different bone, still on the same layer, and we're going to select on bind points for this bone, and we're going to select the group of points we want selected, or bound with this bone. We just click on bind points, and now you can see these are red because this bone is red. These are yellow because this bone is yellow. We're going to need to do the same for the end points to go with the hand bone. So we're going to come over here and select the bone tool and select that bone. We are now going to select the bind points for the forearm layer. And we're going to come down here and select the points. Be careful, and those are now selected for the hand bone. We're going to say bind points, and now they're green like the hand bone is. If we go to manipulate bones now, you can see that when I move this bone, this forearm moves with this bone. These try to stay with this bone, but this bone has not been bound yet, so it's going to look weird. But you get the idea that these are trying to move with what you said. These have not been bound, so those are not moving with it. But if I were to move the hand bone, you can see it mostly moves with it. These will have to be adjusted, but you get the idea. So I'll click on frame 0. Now we're going to try and bind the forearm right, because this is the next on our list, and I like to kind of go from top to bottom to keep from getting confused. So let's go back over here, close this guy up, go to forearm right, go down. Oh, and something we did forget, I'm sorry. On forearm left, we did not attach the shadow, which we also need to do. So let's go back to the shadow layer, and you can see it is here. This is just for the forearm. We will go to the select bone tool again and select the forearm bone. We will select the bind points tool now with that bone selected there. And we're going to select the points that we want associated to this bone. So there's not a lot here. I probably need to add some more. And you can do that by clicking on the add point tool and just, adding a few more points in here to make sure things don't get weird and wonky when it bends. So we go back to the to the select bone tool. It's already selected, so we don't have to worry about that. Back down to the bind points tool. Select the points you want to add by just circling around them or whatever you need to do. These are not going to need to move with the hand, so we can just select all of those. Once they're selected, you click bind points. They will turn yellow like the bone right here. We're going to select the next bone, still on the shadow layer of the forearm. We select that bone, and now we go and select the points. The bind points tool, we can select the points we want associated with this bone of this layer. We just select bind points, and now that is done. So now when we move with the manipulate bones tool, you can see the shadow moves mostly with it as well. So that's how that's done. Let's go back to frame 0. We're going to move over to the other arm real quick and do the same thing. See if you can do it on your own, but I would suggest kind of working with me until. So we're going to go here to the forearm right layer, right here. We're going to select the bone, which is going to be the forearm bone for now. We're going to go down to the bind points tool and figure out which points we want, which are going to be everything. I'm gonna not select those double points on that hand this time. We'll see how that works out better. We'll select all these to bind and click bind points. Then we're going to select the hand bone and then select the bind points tool. And now we're going to bind these points from the forearm layer to this selected hand bone. They should turn blue. Perfect. And then we're going to get the next bone, the select bone tool right here. And on the same layer here still, right here still on the forearm, we're going to bind these points to this bone, selecting bind points. So now when you move these, this should move a little better than the other one when you move the hand. Yes, you can see it's not squishing really bad and pinching. You'll see. It'll make sense here in a minute. And also, when we move this, these are working with this bone. They're not working with this upper arm because it hasn't been attached to anything yet. In fact, let's get the shadow fixed here real quick. We'll probably add at least one more point in here just to make sure, make sure everything is selected. You probably left it in the car. And let's go ahead and select for the shadow here, the bone, which is the forearm bone. I'm just going to select all of these points except for the top two. I'm going to bind the points. I'm going to go ahead and select the next bone and select these points and bind them that way. And, oops, I almost closed my thing by accident. And now I'm going to move the arm just to check that the shadow works, which seems like it does. So it looks a little messy right now, and it is a little confusing if you haven't done this before. This is it's not super advanced, but it's kind of advanced if you've never done this before. So now we're going to go and close that up, and we're going to check the left hand here. Now I'm going to slide over again. We're going to bind these two bones to the same layer in two separate ways. Actually, you know what? I had two layers in here. I'm wrong. So in the left hand, let's just go with the hand right, which is this upper part. And we're going to go ahead and select the bone of the hand here. And we're going to go and select the bind points tool. And we're not going to select this edge, but we're going to get everything else from there. And we're going to bind those points. Then we're going to select the forearm bone, and we're going to grab the bind points tool and select the bottom edge of that hand to bind those with the forearm. That way when this moves with the manipulate bones tool, you can see that it stays attached. This is pretty ugly here. I'll fix that. But it stays attached to the arm there. So let's fix this little thing. I kind of messed that up earlier by selecting the wrong points, but we're just going to go with the forearm here. And I'm going to select the bone for the forearm, and I'm going to select the points. And you can see I have these extra points here. I'm going to make sure that these here and here are attached to the hand. So let's select the hand bone, and now the bind points tool. And we're going to just get all of these on the end, including these two extra side points, and we'll click bind points. Those will all turn green. And now when we move this wrist should look, a lot better. There we go. Okay, cool. And now let's go ahead and do the thumb. We're going to close up the forearm, back into the hand here, and grab the thumb. And because we want it to remain attached to them, these 2 points here are going to be attached to the forearm. So we're going to grab the forearm bone. We're going to go back to our bind points tool and select these points and click bind points. Now we're going to go back here to select the bone and select the thumb bone, back to the bind points tool, and make sure that we bind those points to the thumb bone and bind points. Now when we go to the manipulate bones tool, you will see that the thumb kind of more naturally stays attached. We could probably make this line visible. That way we can get some of this motion going on. this can happen without jacking anything up and looks pretty good. Alright, so now let's zoom out. We're going to go to the right hand and do the same thing. We'll open it up. We'll go to the hand layer. And we're going to probably start with the forearm bone. And then we're going to go to bind points. And we're going to select those points, bind them to the forearm. Then we can go with the hand bone and go with the bind points tool. And grab the rest of those and bind those to the hand bone. Cool. On the thumb, I'm thinking about making the thumb not move independently. So, well, as independently. So we'll go to the thumb layer. Because right now I have it when the thumb bone moves, this entire layer moves, except for the points that are attached to the wrist. I'm going to try and make some of these in the middle to stay attached to the hand so it doesn't just fly around like it's a loose part. So we're going to go with the select bone tool, select the thumb, and I'm going to go ahead and probably just get these here, not this guy, because this one can stay attached. I'm going to click bind points. We're going to select the hand bone now, select the bind points, select these 2 points right in the center, bind those. And then when I select the arm bone, the forearm bone, and then bind points, we can select those points, bind points up here to bind them to that bone, go to the manipulate bones tool, and now you can see that when I move the hand, everything moves right. And then when I go to the thumb, yeah, see, it opens up without doing this weird separation here. So that's great. Let's fix it on the other one real quick. Because this one, you can see opens like it's fallen off. So if we open up this hand, go to this thumb, reset it to 0. Let's grab the bone, which this is good, but we want the hand bone now. We're going to grab the bind points and make sure that these 2 points here are bound to the hand. Now all of this should work. So the hand works fine. And now the thumb does the same thing as the other. And we can adjust this curvature over time with a special action later. So that worked great. Cool, let's close up the hands now. Now we're going to go with, let's save any of the facial stuff for later. Eyes, nose, mouth, blah, blah, blah. Not sure why these aren't included in my head group, which they were. Let me just double check something here. When I move my head bone, those all go. Hand, brow. See, that's very strange that those are outside of the head group. It's because they're outside of the head group because they're not in a group, but they are bound to the head bone. So it's totally fine. There's the head group, the scarf, mane. We're going to... Let's take the scarf mane, and we're going to bind that mostly to the neck. So let's take our neck bone here, go back to frame 0 here, and we're going to select what points we want associated with that. So we're going to go here to bind points. We're not going to pick these top edge ones. I want those kind of moving with the head. We're going to select all of these except for, let's say, those bottom ones there, and we're going to bind those to the neck bone. Then we're going to select the head bone, grab the bind points tool, and make sure these points stay with the head bone. And then we're going to grab the chest bone, select bind points, and make sure these bones stay with the chest bone. And then make sure we only get the ones we want. Close it up. There we go. And then select bind points. Now that way when we move the neck, it stretches and stuff on its own. And this one might have wanted to stay with the chest bone. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go back to our points, and we're going to take the chest bone and we're going to associate this point as well. Maybe even this one. So where there doesn't create a gap there. So make sure you don't accidentally select all of them like I just did. See, that's very easy to do. There we go. We're going to bind these to the chest bone. So now when we move the neck, you see we don't get that separation. We can worry about the way that wiggly line looks here with an action later. And so now also when the head moves, it stays attached at the scarf with the head, so it doesn't open up some weird looking thing too. All right, if you're watching, say hello. Let me know if you're learning anything, if you want to know anything about what I'm doing. Cool. So now we're going to go move on to the scarf. So the scarf tail doesn't have bones, but we can add them in now after the fact. So we're going to go back up to the bone layer right here at the top. We're going to select the chest bone. In fact, we can select the neck bone to have this start from. And I'm going to go ahead and add a bone here with the Add Bone tool. We're just going to make one here, one here, one here, and one more at the end. I'm not worried about the little frillies. They're not going to move probably. And so while those are, knocked out, I'm going to go back to that top bone again. We're going to come down here to the scarf tail. We're going to start associating certain points with certain bones. Now, I may or may not have enough bones in here, or points in here, I mean. So I'm going to add an extra one here to make sure we have some points associated with that bone. And this one's probably okay. This one's could use a couple more right here and here. And that one is more than enough. So let's go ahead back. That's going to be one of those things you just kind of get. I will show in a much simpler version of this later in a different video how to worry about that. But let's go ahead and take this first bone here. This one's going to be kind of a non-moving bone. It's going to be kind of the root for the scarf to the neck. So we're just going to take it. And now we're going to say with bind points, what points are associated with this one. And I'm just going to pick all of these and say bind points. They will turn the blue of that bone. We're going to select the next bone here. Select bind points. We're going to bind these with that one. Select bind points. And then we're going to move down and we're going to select the next bone here. Select bind points and select these points to associate and say bind points. We're going to select the next and last bone here and select all of the remaining points. There we go. And select bind points. That way when we move the scarf, the bones, the scarf tail will now move. It's not going to move great or perfect, but we can fix that with actions. So right now we need to select our bones and we need to go to the bone layer and I need to turn down the strength of these bones. So I'm going to grab, or I'm going to circle these bones here we have. And if we accidentally get others, it's fine. We're just going to grab the bone strength and we're going to turn it all the way down like we did before. And then now because these are associated by points, when we move our bones, they will in fact move the scarf. Now it might get a little ugly in places, but we can fix any of that movement later on with actions. Okay, so that's good to go. Also, this little tag here needs a bone so that if she moves and this thing rocks back and forth, we can make it do that. We can also just move it on our own if we want to do that. So what I'm going to do is go to the zipper layer. And if we want, we can put a bone in there. We can make it dynamic or it flings around on its own. So that's not a bad idea. But we're going to do this on the bone layer. We need to select the bone we want it parented to, so the chest bone. And we're going to add a bone now from here to here. We're going to say kind of okay. But now we're going to go to that zipper layer. And I want to associate all of those points. So we're just going to select this bind layer button and select that bone. And they'll be fully associated. Eventually that will become a dynamic bone that'll fling around when the chest moves. So as far as I know, everything's good. So now we need to worry about the collars. So let's take collar L. As far as I know, I thought that one was already layer bound. Maybe not. So I am going to layer bind this collar layer to the chest bone for now. I might change my mind. So we're going to do the same thing with the other collar. Now the torso, this is the one that's probably the most convoluted, complex. There's a lot of points here, and there's a lot of bones. So one of the things we want to do is we definitely want to point bind this guy. And we're going to take our chest bone here, and we're going to grab our points. And I'm trying to decide. I think we're just going to do that. I'm just going to pull this down and select all of these points. Nope, my bad. So that bone is just going to be the points that are from here up. And then we're going to bind points. Then we're going to go select the next bone. For some reason I was confused and thought I was doing something else. We're going to select these points here, which is a lot more. Bind those. And then we're going to bind the bottom edge with this root bone, I believe. So I'm going to select the bone right here, and we're going to select points that go with it. And the reason why I'm doing that is because when I move the upper half, I want the waist to kind of stay by itself, controlled, not moved around, and so on. And I think that'll be fine for this character. We can now see when I move these bones back in the bone layer. We don't have to go to the bone layer to do this, but it's easiest to show you that way. We can move this, and her body moves. Well, don't worry about anything else that's moving that's not supposed to. And also the arms move because they are parented to that upper bone. This one moves and squishes okay. So everything's working well. Let's go back to frame 0 there. I think I have bone strength turned on for one of these bones, so I think it's the zipper. So let's go and check bone strength. I'm just going to select all my bones, turn on, look at the bone strength, and yes, that is on. So I'm just going to turn that down. Cool. All right, let's move on to the skirt or the legs. So let's go to, yes, the skirt. And within here, I'm going to select the layer inside of the skirt here, not the group, but the skirt itself. We're going to select the bones we want. So I'm going to take this bone and associate it with certain points of the skirt. So these to the side, like this. And that should be exactly what we need. So we'll just say bind points. And also on the shadow layer, we're going to need to select, to decide which points go with what bone here. So we're going to select these points. Probably these. We don't need the uppers because those will be associated with the root bone in a minute. So now I'm going to select that root bone. This is for the shadow. And we're going to select all of these uppers to go with that bone, because they're going to stay attached to the waist basically. And then back on the skirt here, we're going to select the leg bone here. And now the points we want with that leg bone will be these. And we can take that one too, bind those. So now when the leg moves, this parts of the skirt will move accordingly. Let's go back to the shadow and just make sure what's happening here. So I'm going to select the thigh bone here. The points we want will be these using the bind points tool. We'll select bind points. Now we're going to go back to the skirt. Select the bone we want still. Here, remember, don't get the top edge. Those are associated with the, or should be associated with the root, which if they're not, I'll go back and make them. So these will be, well, let's just get these and bind those. I did not pick these because I think that these are more associated with that leg bone moving there. I'm going to grab the waist bone here, and now I'm going to associate this top edge of the skirt. I guess I got confused because the other ones were on the shadow. So this top edge of the skirt will be associated also with that root bone. And making sure the shadow is all good. Yeah, it is. So now with the skirt, we'll go down to this leg bone. And we need to make sure that all the points involving the leg bone are associated with it as well. So we'll just say bind points. Whoops, I accidentally selected them all, so we undo that. We're going to grab just the ones we want. Make sure you close this up and it'll usually do it right. Cool. So now the shoe we're going to open up. We're going to go with the base of the shoe. This can be totally associated because it's not like a flexible boot. We're going to have it totally associated with the foot bone, I think. I might change my mind. So we'll just do this and bind those. The shadow of the shoe, sounds like a novel title, will also be bound to that foot bone. And then we're going to go with the sock left. I'm going to pick the bottom points to stay with the shoe so that can stretch appropriately. And then we're going to go with the leg bone here, and I'm going to attach all the rest of the points of the sock to the leg bone. And then the leg can be, I think, totally associated with the leg bone. So make sure that we have that one selected, which we do. And now the legs points will be bound to it. So now we just have the other shoe and stuff. So we'll use the shadow of the shoe. Once again, the best novel ever written. Right here will be, whoops, all of them selected and bound. The shoe is going to also be using the shoe bone, and we're just going to select all of those points and bind those. And now the sock, we're going to do separate. So these points at the bottom will be associated with the foot. And then these points, or sorry, this bone here for the sock will take all of these points above. And now we go to the leg, right, and those, all of those points. We could even do a layer binding on that. But let's just take the points and make sure all of them are associated. So how you guys doing? If you're watching, say hello. I think that is most of the, yeah, that's most of the rigging except for the hair back. So we're going to go in here and look at the hair back, and the main shape of this is probably going to need at least we're going to do 2 bones though, or 2 bone chains. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the main bone here. We're going to go back to our bone layer first of all. And with that bone selected, it'll parent the next one to it. So I'm going to add a bone, and this is going to come down from about here, here, and here. We're going to go back up with the up arrow to the head bone, and I'm going to go here, here, and here to sling our hair around when our head moves. We can do it manually, but I think I'm going to make these dynamic bones so that when the head bone moves, they just automatically do it. We're going to go back down now to that hair back layer, and we're going to associate these bones with parts of that. So the bone we want first of all is going to be the head bone itself, because we want to make sure this, at least this first row of points, I'm going to take these and these, so all of these I'm circling, and bind those to that head bone. Now we're going to go just like the skirt and select this bone and just bind these points to that. Not a lot to choose from, but that will work fine. We're going to next take the next bone. We're going to bind these points to that. We're going to take the next bone. We're going to bind all the remaining points here, that should be fine, to that. Now we're going to do it the other way, the other side, I mean. We're going to go, I think I did that wrong. Maybe, no, that's right. Okay, I thought I over-selected. Here we go, the first bone here is going to be these here. I'm going to bind those. I'm going to go with the next bone here. We're going to bind these points. Not many, just one, I think, in fact. And then we're going to go with the next bone. And I'm going to bind the remaining points, including this one, here to that. Okay, cool. So as far as I know, it looks like all of the rigging, the base rigging, is done. We need to take off our strength on any of those points. So I'm just going to go back to the bone layer, go to my bone strength, actually it's my select bone tool. Just going to select all these. And I'm going to go to the bone strength and just turn that all down. Now when I manipulate anything, these should wiggle and move. We did not do the upper arms yet. It's something I was planning on doing this whole time and forgot. We also didn't do the shadow of the hair. So let's get that done. The shadow. It's like the shadow of the shoe, but very different. And I'm going to pick the head bone. Then we're going to pick the points here, the bind points tool, and get these, the ones at the top, bound to the head. Now we can select these guys and start running down these chains to the sides. Bind points, the next bone. And it just becomes this process of, you know, getting it done. Bind points. This one. Bind points. Just leave that. And so the next side, we're going to bind these points. And then, like I said, you could tell that they're bound by the color. So these here, it's a green bone. So I'm going to bind these points and they will turn green. And then we're going to select the next bone and last bone and grab all these and bind those. And then we need, what was the last thing I said? The upper arms. So I'm going to close up the things we don't need for now. The hair, everything else. We're going to find the torso, arm, upper right here. This is the left one. There's been no binding done here because I completely forgot. We're going to select this bone here. We could select these points at the end and bind them to the chest bone, but because they're behind, they're not going to be seen, and this is going to work just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and bind all of these except for the end ones. They're going to be completely bound to the upper arm. The last bits are going to now be bound to the forearm. These here. That way when it moves, they stretch together. So now we're going to go with the other upper arm and go with, we did not do the shadow of the last one. Let me fix that. So shadow. Let's go ahead and select those points at the end. Will be associated with that forearm bone. And then these will all be associated with the upper arm bone. All right, cool. So now over to this other arm. We are going to use this bone, and we're going to associate every point to the upper. And then with this bone, the forearm bone, we're going to just take these, these end guys, bind those. And then we're going to take the shadow as before, and we're going to connect these guys here and this bone here. We're going to bind those. Now everything should be bound. I'm going to go back to the bone layer and just check. The bones work. They are, like I said, they've got issues, but this is how what actions are used for. These work. These work primarily. Making sure they're all connected and doing their thing. These work. These work. These work. Okay, making sure all this is hunky-dory. The head. The neck. These. This one. These mostly. This moves everything. Making sure everything is... There's nothing trailing behind. Looks like we got a body shadow. So that's why I check. So in the torso, we are leaving behind our body shadow. Easily fixed by making sure that our points are attached to our bones. So we're going to go here. That's going to be essentially these. Next bone over, which will be this guy. That's going to be these. Bind, and then we're going to bind the last couple with the root bone. Right here, like this. Okay, cool. So now, I promise, now when we move these, they should work decently. And there's no shadow left behind, as they say. So let's move the body first to make sure nothing's getting left behind, which is good. And then we will move the foot, the leg. Not bad. We could disassociate the skirt with the lower leg, I guess, but I just kind of wanted him so that when she walked it would fling out. Looks like the shadow there is moving fine. We did test this to be working. The hair works. So I think everything is good to go. Now it's just a matter of doing all of our actions and everything else, and everything will be set for animation. So that's pretty much the end of the video here. I just wanted to show you guys the basic setup, rigging, the redrawing, the basic rigging, and then we're going to go into, in the next video, expressions and stuff. I have a few videos to do that with. So thanks for watching and hanging out, and I need to go get something to eat before I pass out. I'm trying to lose weight, and yeah, so there's that. Cool. Well, thanks for watching.